Some revelations take years to surface. For Maya and Sophia, friendship had been their foundation for a decade, comfortable, reliable, safe. Neither expected that a weekend trip to celebrate their 10-year anniversary would unearth feelings that had been silently growing beneath the surface all along. As they navigated the delicate space between friendship and something more, both women faced the same terrifying question: was risking everything worth the chance at everything more? Maya Rodriguez checked her phone for the 5th time in 20 minutes, scrolling through her conversation with Sophia. The train was running late, and she texted to let her best friend know. Sophia had responded with her typical humor, saying that after 10 years of friendship, she expected nothing less than Maya's consistent tardiness. Their friendship had begun in college. Maya, the ambitious journalism major who spoke too fast and dreamed too big, and Sophia Chen, the thoughtful architecture student who noticed details others missed. They'd been assigned as roommates freshman year, an administrative decision that had inadvertently shaped the next decade of their lives. It hadn't always been easy. Maya's extroverted nature sometimes clashed with Sophia's need for quiet. Sophia's meticulous planning occasionally frustrated Maya's spontaneity, but they'd learned to balance each other, finding strength in their differences rather than division. Now, at 30, they'd built lives that remained intertwined despite separate careers and apartments. Weekly dinners, daily texts, and the unspoken understanding that no matter what happened, they would be there for each other. The kind of friendship that felt like home. The train finally pulled into the station, and Maya grabbed her weekend bag, excitement bubbling inside her. They'd planned this trip to commemorate 10 years since they'd met a cabin in the mountains. Just the two of them, away from work and responsibilities and the constant noise of the city. Maya spotted Sophia immediately upon exiting the station. She stood by her car, dark hair pulled back in her signature messy bun, oversized sweater falling off one shoulder. Something fluttered in Maya's chest, a sensation she'd experienced increasingly over the past year, but had attributed to the comfort of familiarity. Sophia waved, her smile widening as Maya approached. She commented that Maya had actually packed light for once, seeming pleasantly surprised. Maya laughed, explaining she had finally learned the art of minimalism after Sophia's years of gentle teasing about her over. As they embraced, Maya noticed something different, a lingering quality to their hug, a slight hesitation before they separated. The drive to the mountains filled with their usual conversation updates on Maya's latest article, Sophia's challenging client, mutual friends, and the podcast they both followed. The comfort of their rhythm felt like slipping into well-worn shoes. The cabin exceeded their expectations. Nestled among pine trees with a view of the lake, it combined rustic charm with modern amenities. Sophia had found it, of course. She always discovered the perfect places, attentive to Maya's preferences, a good writing spot by the window, a fully equipped kitchen for Sophia's cooking experiments, separate bedrooms but with a cozy common area for their late-night talks. They settled in quickly, falling into their usual patterns. Sophia organized their groceries while Maya built a fire, each moving around the other with the unconscious coordination of people who knew each other's rhythms by heart. That evening, they sat on the porch with glasses of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Maya asked why they hadn't done this sooner. Sophia replied thoughtfully that perhaps they had needed the 10 years to appreciate it properly. When Sophia suggested they write letters to their past selves, the two awkward freshmen, who had no idea what lay ahead, Maya agreed enthusiastically. They spent the evening reminiscing, laughing about their college misadventures, the terrible dates they'd helped each other through, the celebrations and disappointments they'd weathered together. Maya found herself watching Sophia more carefully than usual. The way her hands moved when she spoke passionately about her latest design project. How her laughter started as a small chuckle, before blossoming into something full-bodied and uninhibited. The thoughtful pause before she responded to Maya's questions. Had Sophia always tucked her hair behind her ear that way? Had her eyes always crinkled at the corners when she smiled? Had Maya always felt this inexplicable warmth spreading through her chest when they were together? As they prepared for bed, Maya felt a strange nervousness she couldn't explain. They said goodnight in the hallway between their rooms, and Sophia reached out to squeeze Maya's hand, a normal gesture between them. But tonight it sent electricity up Maya's arm. Lying in bed, Maya stared at the ceiling, trying to make sense of these reactions. She'd dated men and women throughout college and her 20s. Her bisexuality something she'd come to terms with early and that Sophia had always supported without question. But she'd never allowed herself to see Sophia as anything but her friend. The foundation of her life. The person who knew her better than anyone. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. The reason none of her relationships had lasted. The standard against which she'd unconsciously measured every potential partner. The comfort and excitement she felt in equal measure whenever they were together. She was in love with her best friend. Maya barely slept that night, the revelation echoing through her mind like a song on repeat. By morning, she had convinced herself that acting on these feelings would be catastrophic. 10 years of friendship wasn't something to gamble with. She would enjoy their weekend, return to the city, and find a way to move past these feelings. The universe, it seemed, had other plans. They spent the next day hiking trails that wound through forests and alongside streams. Sophia had researched the best routes, as she always did, finding one that challenged them just enough without being exhausting. The physical activity helped Maya push aside her revelation, focusing instead on her burning calves and the spectacular views. By mid-afternoon, they reached a clearing overlooking the valley. The autumn foliage spread below them in a tapestry of reds, oranges, and golds. They sat on a fallen log. Sharing the lunch Sophia had packed another way, she quietly took care of Maya, anticipating her needs before she even expressed them. Sophia seemed unusually quiet, her gaze distant as she looked out over the landscape. When Maya asked if something was bothering her, Sophia hesitated before admitting she'd ended things with Eric, the architect she'd been dating for the past few months. Maya felt a complicated mix of emotions, concern for her friend's feelings, but also a selfish flutter of something that felt uncomfortably like hope. She asked why Sophia hadn't mentioned it earlier. Sophia shrugged, explaining that it hadn't been a dramatic breakup, just a mutual recognition that something was missing. When Maya inquired further about what had been missing, Sophia looked at her for a long moment before turning back to the view. She said simply that she'd realized she was comparing him to someone else, and no one measured up. The statement hung between them, loaded with unspoken meaning. Maya's heart pounded so loudly she was certain Sophia could hear it. She wanted to ask who this someone else was, but fear stopped the words in her throat. They hiked back to the cabin, mostly in silence, a charged quality to the air between them that hadn't been there before. Maya felt hyper-aware of every accidental brush of their hands, every glance from Sophia that lasted a beat longer than usual. That evening, Sophia suggested they read their letters to their younger selves aloud. They settled on the cabin's plush rug before the fireplace, another bottle of wine between them. Sophia volunteered to go first, unfolding her neatly written pages. Her letter was everything Maya expected: thoughtful, funny, wise. Sophia told her 18-year-old self about the career she would build, the confidence she would gain, the family relationships that would heal with time and understanding. She described the joy of creating spaces that changed how people lived, the satisfaction of seeing her designs become reality. And then Sophia's voice softened as she reached the final paragraph. She told her younger self about the friendship that would define her life, how Maya would push her to take risks, to speak up, to embrace experiences she might otherwise have avoided. How Maya's unwavering belief in her had given her strength during her darkest moments. Sophia's voice wavered slightly as she read the final lines. She advised her younger self to pay attention to her heart sooner, to recognize that sometimes the love you're looking for has been right beside you all along. The silence that followed felt weighted with possibility. Maya's hands trembled as she held her own letter, suddenly aware that what she'd written echoed similar sentiments. She began reading, her journalist's training keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. She told her younger self about the career challenges she would face and overcome, the countries she would visit, the stories she would tell. She described the pride she would feel seeing her byline in major publications, giving voice to people and issues that might otherwise go unheard. And like Sophia, she ended with their friendship. She described how Sophia's quiet strength had anchored her, how Sophia's perspective had broadened her own, how Sophia's presence in her life had been the constant amidst all the changes and challenges of adulthood. Her final lines acknowledged what her younger self couldn't possibly have known, that the random roommate assignment would bring the most important person into her life, someone who would know her completely and love her anyway, someone who would become her home, regardless of physical location. As Maya finished reading, she looked up to find Sophia watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. The space between them seemed to vibrate with unspoken words. Sophia asked quietly if Maya meant what she'd written about her being the most important person in her life. Maya nodded, unable to look away from Sophia's gaze. She admitted that she'd recently realized her feelings might go beyond friendship, but had been terrified of risking what they had. Sophia's expression softened. She confessed that she'd been wrestling with similar feelings for months, maybe years. She described how her recent relationships had failed, because no one understood her like Maya did. No one made her feel simultaneously challenged and accepted. No one else felt like home. They sat with this mutual revelation, the weight of 10 years of friendship and the possibility of something more stretching between them like a bridge. Neither was quite ready to cross. Maya suggested they should take time to think, to be sure this wasn't just the romance of the setting, or the nostalgia of their anniversary playing tricks on them. Sophia agreed, though neither moved from their positions by the fire, separated by mere inches that suddenly felt like both too much space and not enough. They stayed up late into the night talking about when they first began to feel this shift, about their fears of ruining what they had, about what might happen if they took this risk. The conversation felt both new and familiar, the foundation of their friendship supporting this unexplored territory. When they finally went to their separate rooms, the air between them felt charged with potential energy, like the moment before lightning strikes. Maya woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of gentle rain against the cabin's roof. She found Sophia in the kitchen, hair tousled from sleep, wearing the oversized university sweatshirt she'd had since their freshman year. The domesticity of the scene made Maya's heart constrict with longing. Sophia looked up as Maya entered, a mix of vulnerability and determination in her expression. She said she'd been thinking all night, and she'd realized something important. They'd spent 10 years building the strongest foundation possible for a relationship. They knew each other's flaws, habits, dreams, and fears. They'd seen each other at their worst and their best. What better preparation could there be for taking this next step? Maya leaned against the counter, considering Sophia's words. She acknowledged Sophia's points, but expressed her fear that romantic relationships were different. They could end, often messily, and she couldn't bear the thought of losing Sophia from her life completely. Sophia moved closer, pointing out gently that they'd already lasted longer than most marriages. Their friendship had weathered career crises, family troubles, other relationships, and geographic distance. They'd chosen to keep each other central to their lives through all of life's changes. Wasn't that already a kind of commitment? The rain intensified outside, creating a cocoon around their conversation. Maya admitted that she'd been feeling increasingly unsatisfied with her dating life, because no one measured up to what she and Sophia already had. She described how she'd find herself on dates mentally, noting things to tell Sophia later, as if the date itself was less important than sharing the experience with her afterward. Sophia laughed in recognition, confessing she'd done the same thing. She described a moment months ago when she'd been at dinner with Eric, and had realized she'd rather be having the meal with Maya. That was when she'd begun to acknowledge her feelings might be more than friendship. They moved to the couch, mugs in hand, the rain creating a soothing backdrop to their conversation. Maya asked how this would work. Practically, would they date while living in separate apartments? Would they tell their friends immediately, or wait? What would they tell their families? Sophia suggested they didn't need to have all the answers right away. They could take this slowly, date as if they were getting to know each other in this new context, while having the advantage of their deep existing knowledge. They could navigate each question as it arose, together, as they always had. The practicality of this approach, so typically Sophia, made Maya smile. She realized that this was why they worked. Sophia's thoughtful planning balanced Maya's impulsivity. Together, they found the middle ground. A comfortable silence fell between them. Maya thought about all the moments that had led to this one late-night study sessions in their dorm, holding Sophia's hand at her father's funeral, celebrating job offers and promotions, nursing each other through illnesses and breakups, the thousands of ordinary moments that had knit their lives together. Maya set down her mug and turned to face Sophia fully. She asked if they could try something. Sophia nodded, understanding in her eyes before Maya even explained. Their first kiss was gentle, a question rather than a declaration. Maya was struck by how natural it felt, as if they'd been moving toward this moment since they first met. When they separated, both were smiling with a mixture of wonder and recognition. Sophia commented that it hadn't felt strange at all, which surprised her. Maya agreed, admitting she'd worried there wouldn't be a spark, because they knew each other so well. But instead, their connection seemed to have deepened the physical attraction rather than diminished it. They spent the rest of the rainy day in the cabin, alternating between long conversations about their shifting relationship and comfortable silences that needed no filling. They cooked together, read beside each other, and occasionally reached out to touch, testing the new physical dimension of their connection with intertwined fingers, a hand on a knee, Sophia's head resting on Maya's shoulder. By evening, the rain had cleared, leaving the forest around them washed clean and glistening. They walked to the lake, holding hands for the first time, as more than friends. The sunset reflected on the water's surface, more beautiful for being shared. Sophia asked if Maya was still scared. Maya admitted she was, but not of being with Sophia. She feared waking up from what felt like a dream. Sophia squeezed her hand, assuring her this was real. They were real, and whatever came next, they would face it together. On their last morning at the cabin, they sat on the porch with their coffee, watching the sunrise. Maya suggested they write another set of letters, this time to their future selves, to be opened on their 20th anniversary. Sophia loved the idea, and they spent their final hours at the cabin writing privately, sealing their thoughts in envelopes to be opened a decade later. As they packed the car, a comfortable certainty had settled between them. Maya observed that 10 years ago, they couldn't have imagined where their random roommate assignment would lead them. Sophia smiled, saying perhaps their younger selves had known subconsciously all along why else had neither of them ever moved far from the other, despite job opportunities elsewhere. The drive back to the city felt different from their journey, out no longer to friends on a weekend getaway, but to people who had chosen to transform their friendship into something even more profound. When they reached Maya's apartment, Sophia turned off the engine but made no move to help with the bags. Instead, she asked a question that made Maya's heart race. What would Maya think about them looking for a place together when their leases ended in a few months? Maya felt tears spring to her eyes as the full weight of their decision settled over her. Not just a change in how they labeled their relationship, but a commitment to building a shared life. She nodded, unable to speak past the emotion tightening her throat. As Sophia helped carry Maya's bag upstairs, their fingers intertwined with the ease of long practice, but the excitement of new beginnings. At Maya's door, they paused, both suddenly awkward. Maya asked if Sophia wanted to come inside, the invitation carrying new meaning in the context of their changed relationship. Sophia smiled and said yes, but suggested they still take things slowly. They had all the time in the world to discover this new dimension of their connection. As Maya unlocked her door, she was struck by how this moment felt both like an ending and a beginning, the conclusion of 10 years of friendship as they had known it, and the first step into something even more beautiful. The space between friends and lovers, it turned out, was shorter than she had ever imagined, yet crossing it had changed everything.